There comes a moment when you stop running after people who were never running toward you. You stop explaining yourself, stop proving your worth, and stop begging to be seen. And that silence, that stillness, it changes everything. Because people do notice when you stop chasing. They feel the shift. They sense the strength. It's not arrogance. It's not indifference. It's called self-respect, the kind of quiet power that makes the world pause and wonder what changed. You didn't become colder. You became clearer. You finally realized that anyone who needs to be convinced to value you was never worthy of you to begin with. When you constantly chase approval, love, or validation, you drain yourself in ways you don't even realize. Every time you reach for someone who doesn't reach back, every time you try to prove your worth to people who only take advantage of it, you're leaking energy that's meant to build you, not break you. The problem isn't that you care too much. It's that you're giving too much of yourself to people who haven't earned the right to receive it. You teach others how to treat you by what you tolerate. And the more you chase, the more you show them that they can give you less and still have you chasing more. The truth is, chasing never wins you respect. It only wins you exhaustion. Because the moment you begin to pursue something that isn't pursuing you, you shift the balance of power. You stop being an equal and start being an option. And when you live your life chasing attention, love, or acceptance, you're no longer choosing. It's others who are choosing for you. That's not power, that's dependence. And it's the fastest way to lose yourself. When you stop chasing, you reclaim your energy. You redirect all that emotion, that focus, that effort back into your own growth. Suddenly, the same energy that once fueled anxiety begins to build confidence. You start standing taller, speaking slower, thinking clearer. People notice that. They notice when you stop calling first, when you stop explaining why you deserve to stay, when you stop bending to be understood. Your silence becomes your statement. Your absence becomes your boundary. You see, energy never disappears. It transfers. When you take it back from others and pour it into yourself, your presence becomes magnetic. You no longer seek validation. You embody it. You no longer beg for love. You attract it. That's the transformation people don't talk about enough. How peace looks powerful, how restraint looks confident, how self-respect changes the way you walk into a room without saying a word. And when those who once took you for granted start to notice your distance, don't let guilt pull you back. Remember, they only recognize your value when it's no longer convenient for them to ignore it. That's not love, that's awareness. Don't confuse their sudden attention for change. The real change happened in you. The decision to stop running after people and start walking toward yourself. Self-respect is not about arrogance or pride. It's about recognizing that your energy is sacred. It's about understanding that the right people will never make you chase because they'll already meet you halfway. It's about realizing that you don't need to shout your worth. You need to live it. And the moment you stop chasing, you'll feel it. An unshakable calm that comes from knowing you no longer need to be chosen to feel valuable. You already are. Silence has a power that words can never compete with. When you stop explaining, stop defending, stop chasing, people start to pay attention in a way they never did before. Because silence isn't empty, it's full of truth. It's the quiet reminder that you've had enough of proving yourself to those who never really listened. When you go silent, it's not about ignoring anyone. It's about respecting yourself enough to stop giving energy to places that don't reciprocate it. You reach a point where your peace matters more than being understood, more than being right, more than being heard. That's when silence becomes strength. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from anger. It comes from clarity. You stop reacting to every little thing. You stop trying to fix people who keep breaking the same way. You stop explaining your intentions to those who are determined to misunderstand you. It's in that silence that your self-worth begins to grow. Because the truth is, when you go quiet, people notice. They notice that something shifted. They may not admit it out loud, but they feel the absence of your energy, your effort, your presence. They start to realize how much space you once filled with your time, your love, your attention. You see, silence is not weakness, it's control. It's you taking back the power that constant talking, pleasing, and proving took away from you. It's you saying, I don't need to fight for my place in someone's life. If they can't see my value, they were never meant to hold it. Silence is the language of self-respect. It doesn't demand attention, it commands it. Because while noise tries to convince, silence simply shows. When you're no longer chasing, begging, or explaining, people start wondering what changed. They sense something different about you, something steady, something grounded. And that's the beauty of it. When you go silent, you give people the space to reveal themselves. Those who were only around because of what you gave will drift away. Those who truly value you will reach out, not because you asked, but because they feel the loss of your presence. Silence creates contrast. It shows who was there for your energy and who was there for you. That's why silence isn't about manipulation. It's about revelation. Eventually, you realize you don't owe explanations to anyone who didn't listen the first time. You learn that peace feels better than proving your point. You learn that silence can heal what noise kept wounding. And slowly, that silence becomes your power. It's not about cutting people off. It's about cutting off chaos. It's about choosing calm over conflict, dignity over desperation, and truth over temporary attention. Because when you stop speaking to be heard and start standing in silence, the world begins to hear you differently. Not because you raised your voice, but because you raised your standards. You don't earn respect by shouting your worth into every room you walk into. You earn it by the way you carry yourself when no one is watching. Self-respect is not something you declare. It's something you display. The way you speak, the way you treat others, the way you handle disappointment. All of it reflects what you believe about yourself. You can tell the world you know your worth, but if your actions don't align with your words, no one will believe it. Real confidence doesn't come from being loud. It comes from being consistent. It's in the quiet strength of a person who knows who they are without needing anyone else to validate it. There's a reason mirrors don't make noise. They just reflect what's in front of them. Self-respect works the same way. It mirrors back to the world how you see yourself. If you carry yourself with dignity, people sense it. If you treat yourself with care, others learn how to treat you. You don't need to convince anyone to value you when your presence already communicates it. That's what makes real confidence so magnetic. It's calm, grounded, and effortless. It doesn't seek attention. It attracts it naturally. So many people exhaust themselves trying to prove they matter. They talk about their worth, their loyalty, their effort, hoping someone will finally see it. But you don't need to explain your value to people who can't recognize it. That's like trying to show a mirror to someone who refuses to look. The right people will see your worth without you having to perform for it. The wrong ones will question it no matter what you do. Your peace comes from understanding that difference and acting accordingly. Living your worth means choosing differently. It means walking away from what doesn't respect you, even when it hurts. It means setting standards that protect your energy instead of proving your patience. It means understanding that your silence, your composure, your self-control, all of that speaks louder than any declaration you could make. When you truly respect yourself, you stop entertaining what diminishes you. You stop chasing validation because you realize that every time you beg for recognition, you hand someone else the power to define you. The moment you stop explaining yourself, you'll feel something shift inside. It's like your spirit exhales. You stop needing to be understood by everyone, and you start being understood by yourself. That's the foundation of self-respect. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's the quiet certainty that you no longer need to perform to prove your value. You simply are. And that kind of energy can't be ignored. You become your own mirror, clear, calm, and whole, and the world starts to see you through that reflection. Not because you told them who you are, but because you showed them. There comes a time when you stop running after people, and that's when everything changes. You stop trying to prove that you're enough, you stop showing up where you're unappreciated, and you stop pouring yourself into places that never fill you back. At first, it feels strange, almost uncomfortable, because you've spent so long trying to be seen, trying to be chosen. But then something inside you clicks. You realize that the ones who truly value you never needed to be chased. They were always there, moving beside you, not ahead of you. The moment you stop running, you begin to see who's really meant to stay. When you're always chasing, you give people the illusion that they're above you, that their attention is something you have to earn. But the second you stop running, that illusion breaks. The silence, the distance, the shift in your energy, it catches them off guard. Suddenly, the same people who didn't notice your effort start wondering why you're no longer there. They feel your absence because your presence was never ordinary. You brought energy, consistency, care, and when that disappears, they realize how much space you truly held in their world. That's the moment they start turning around. But by then, something inside you has already changed. You no longer crave what you used to chase. You start to see that peace feels better than attention. That being chosen doesn't mean anything if you have to lose yourself to earn it. You start valuing the kind of love that doesn't require you to beg, the kind of friendship that doesn't demand you to prove, the kind of respect that doesn't come with conditions. And in that realization, you find your balance again. You find your self-worth, not in how others respond to you, but in how you respond to yourself. The stillness that once scared you becomes your strength. You start walking slower, speaking softer, moving wiser. You no longer rush into proving your importance because you know your value doesn't depend on who recognizes it. You don't chase anymore because you've learned that anything real, love, respect, loyalty, doesn't need to be chased. It meets you where you are. It matches your effort. It reciprocates your energy. And once you taste that kind of peace, chaos loses its appeal. The ones who used to take your presence for granted might come back, surprised by your calm. They might test your boundaries, try to pull you back into old patterns, but you won't move the same way again. Because now you know that being still doesn't mean being passive. It means being powerful. It means you've learned the difference between attention and connection. You've stopped running not because you gave up, but because you finally woke up. You finally realized that you were the value all along. And when you stand in that truth, everything that's meant for you finds its way without the chase. Attention is one of the most valuable things you own. It's your time, your energy, your presence, and once it's spent, you don't get it back. Most people don't realize that the more you give your attention to the wrong places, the less of yourself you have left. Every time you overthink someone who doesn't think about you, every time you replay a moment trying to make sense of why someone treated you a certain way, you're spending your attention on something that gives you nothing in return. And like money, attention can either build you or bankrupt you. It depends on where you invest it. The reason attention feels so powerful is because wherever you place it, that's where your energy flows. If you constantly give it to people who drain you, to situations that steal your peace, or to thoughts that bring you down, you're silently training your mind to live in deficit. You end up emotionally exhausted, mentally distracted, spiritually empty. But the moment you begin to treat your attention like currency, everything starts to shift. You start asking yourself, does this conversation deserve my focus? Does this argument deserve my energy? Does this person deserve my time? And when the answer is no, you stop paying the cost. You have to understand that your attention is what gives power to things. Without it, nothing grows. The people you stop responding to, the situations you stop engaging with, they begin to lose their hold on you the moment you take your focus away. That's not avoidance, it's awareness. It's realizing that peace is expensive and you can't afford to keep spending it on chaos. Protecting your attention isn't selfish, it's self-preservation. It's choosing to invest in things that build you instead of break you. When you start redirecting your attention inward, everything changes. The same energy you once gave to overanalyzing others, you begin giving to understanding yourself. You start noticing what triggers you, what motivates you, what fulfills you. You begin creating instead of consuming, growing instead of chasing. And soon, you find yourself surrounded by people and situations that match that energy, because what you focus on expands. If you focus on your growth, you grow. If you focus on your pain, it grows. The choice has always been yours. The people who truly value you will never drain your attention. They'll multiply it. They'll inspire your focus, not compete for it. But the wrong people will treat your attention like a free resource, taking as much as they can without giving anything back. That's why self-respect means knowing when to pull your energy away. It's knowing when to stop feeding what no longer nourishes you. Because every time you choose silence over reaction, peace over drama, and growth over gossip, you're making a powerful statement. You're saying, my attention is too expensive to be wasted on anything that doesn't grow me. And that's not pride. That's maturity. That's power. That's self-respect. The right people don't need to be convinced. They don't need long explanations, repeated efforts, or constant proof of who you are. They see you. They feel your energy. They recognize your value without you having to perform for it. That's the difference between genuine connection and conditional attention. When someone truly respects you, they match your energy naturally. You don't have to chase them, remind them, or beg for their consistency. They show up because they want to, not because you push them to. That kind of presence speaks louder than any promise could. You learn this lesson the hard way, usually after trying too long to make people understand your worth. You bend, you compromise, you overextend, thinking if you just show them enough, they'll finally see what you bring to their life. But that's not how real respect works. People who are meant for you don't need to be convinced. They don't treat your value like a mystery they have to be persuaded to solve. They already know it, and they move accordingly. When you have to keep convincing someone to stay, what you're really doing is trying to buy love with effort. But real love, real friendship, real respect, they're built on mutual recognition, not persuasion. It's exhausting when you find yourself doing all the chasing. You notice the pattern. Your calls go unanswered, your effort goes unnoticed, and your care goes unreciprocated. Yet, you stay hopeful, thinking maybe they'll change. But people don't change because you want them to. They change when they decide to, and if they're not choosing to meet you halfway, that's your sign. The right ones won't need you to explain why you're worth their time. They'll already treat your presence like a privilege, not an afterthought. When you stop convincing, you create space for clarity. You start to see who's really aligned with your energy. The people who fade when you stop chasing were never meant to stay. The ones who step closer when you pull back, they're the real ones. They don't need your performance to appreciate your presence. They value you for who you are, not for what you do for them. That's why letting go isn't a loss. It's an act of faith. You're trusting that what's right for you won't need to be forced. And that's where peace begins. When you stop trying to make people like you, understand you, or love you, you open space for those who just do. You start realizing that real connections don't drain. They flow. They don't confuse. They clarify. They don't make you question your worth. They remind you of it. The right people will never make you chase because they'll always walk beside you. And when you finally experience that kind of effort, that kind of ease, you'll understand why the chase was never worth it. Real love, real respect, real connection. They don't ask you to run. They meet you where you stand. Distance has a way of showing what words and promises often hide. When you finally step back, when you stop showing up out of habit and start protecting your peace, the truth starts to reveal itself. You begin to see who was really there for you and who was there because it was easy. Some people stay close only when they benefit from your presence. They like your energy, your effort, your consistency, but not your boundaries. The moment you pull back that constant giving, they start to disappear. And it's not because you changed, it's because they were never there for the real you. They were there for what you provided. Distance doesn't lie. It doesn't argue or accuse. It just exposes. When you step back, you learn more about people than you ever could by staying close. You start to notice who checks in when they no longer need anything, who still shows up when you stop overextending yourself, and who vanishes the moment your energy isn't freely available. It hurts at first because you want to believe that the people you cared for would care back. But the truth is, distance doesn't destroy real connections. It only destroys the ones that were built on convenience. Sometimes you have to pull back to protect your peace, and in that space, you begin to see things clearly. You notice that genuine people don't get threatened by your boundaries. They don't question your silence or assume the worst. They respect your space because they understand it. They value your energy enough to give you room to breathe. The ones who truly care won't need constant reassurance. They'll simply stay. And that's the kind of energy you start to appreciate when you step back. Calm, steady, secure. The hardest part of creating distance is the fear of losing people. You worry that stepping back means being forgotten. But what you'll learn is that distance doesn't push away the right people. It filters them. It creates space for truth to stand alone. Those who are meant for you will remain consistent, no matter how quiet you become. Their loyalty doesn't depend on how much you give. It depends on who you are. The wrong ones, though, will fade quickly because the relationship only existed when you were the one keeping it alive. Over time, you start to appreciate what distance does for you. It gives you perspective. It reminds you that not everyone deserves full access to your energy. It helps you rebuild your sense of self without the noise of constant connection. You start to choose peace over presence, clarity over closeness. You learn that it's better to stand alone in truth than surrounded by people who only show up for comfort. Distance doesn't just reveal who people are, it also reminds you who you are. And once you see that clearly, you'll never chase false connections again. You'll understand that what's real won't fear distance. It will survive it. When people start leaving your life, it can feel like loss. You look around and see spaces that used to be full, messages that stopped coming, calls that don't happen anymore, faces that slowly disappear. At first, it feels like rejection. You wonder what you did wrong, if you should have tried harder, if maybe you weren't enough. But as time passes and the noise fades, you begin to realize something deeper. You're not losing people, you're losing illusions. You're losing the version of them you created in your mind, the one you hoped they would be, not the one they actually were. And that realization, as painful as it is, becomes freeing. You start to understand that some people were never meant to stay. They were meant to show you something. Maybe they came to teach you what love isn't, what loyalty shouldn't look like, or what self-respect actually means. Their presence had a purpose, and so does their absence. The illusion you lose is the fantasy that others complete you. You thought you needed them to feel whole, to feel worthy, to feel seen. But what you really needed was the silence that came after they left. The silence that forced you to sit with yourself, to listen to your own thoughts, to meet the person you had been neglecting all along. When you stop chasing, you stop searching for validation outside of yourself. You stop believing that someone else holds the missing piece to your piece. You realize you were already complete. You just didn't believe it because you kept looking for reflection instead of self-recognition. You mistook attention for affection, effort for connection, and presence for loyalty. Losing people strips away those illusions and shows you what's real. What's real is you, the person who survived the disappointment, who kept going after being misunderstood, who learned to rebuild from silence. It takes strength to accept that not everyone you love will walk with you forever. Some people only have the capacity to meet you at a certain version of yourself, and when you grow past that, they fall away. That's not failure. That's evolution. You're shedding old attachments so you can step into a life that aligns with who you truly are, not who you used to be. Losing illusions means accepting reality as it is, not as you wish it would be. It means no longer forcing connection, no longer chasing closure, no longer pretending that people are something they've shown you they're not. One day, you'll look back and realize that every ending was an unveiling. Every goodbye cleared space for something more honest. You didn't lose people. You lost the illusion that you needed them to feel whole. And in that space, you found yourself. You found your strength, your calm, your clarity. You stopped waiting to be chosen and finally chose yourself. That's the moment you become free. Not because you're alone, but because you finally understand that being whole was never about who stayed. It was always about who you became when they left. Boundaries are not walls. They're doors that open in the right direction. When you start setting them, people often mistake them for distance, but in truth, they're clarity. You begin to draw lines not to keep others out, but to keep yourself intact. It's about protecting your time, your peace, your mental space. You've spent too long saying yes when everything inside you wanted to say no. You've said yes to please, yes to keep the peace, yes to avoid conflict, and all those yeses have quietly chipped away at your self-respect. The moment you start saying no, everything begins to change. It's uncomfortable at first because you're not used to choosing yourself. But that discomfort is growth, not guilt. Boundaries teach people how to treat you. They send a message without needing to raise your voice. When you say, "I'm not available for that," or "I can't give you my time right now," you're not being rude, you're being honest. And honesty is a form of respect, both for yourself and for others. The right people will understand your boundaries. They'll respect them because they respect you. The wrong people, the ones who only benefited from your lack of limits, will resist. They'll try to guilt you, question you, or make you feel selfish. But their reaction doesn't define your boundary. It reveals their intention. When you start setting boundaries, you begin to see who's really there for you. Some people will step back because they were never there for connection. They were there for convenience. Others will stay, not because they need something from you, but because they value you even when you stop overextending. Boundaries don't push people away. They filter them. They separate those who love you from those who use you, those who understand you from those who only tolerate you. The more you stand firm in your limits, the more you attract people who respect them. Every no you give makes space for a stronger yes. A yes to your goals, to your rest, to your sanity. You stop being available for every request, every crisis, every demand that doesn't serve you. And in doing so, you start living from intention instead of obligation. You start choosing people and situations that align with your peace. That's how you build a life rooted in respect, by not giving your energy where it isn't appreciated. It takes courage to set boundaries, but it takes wisdom to maintain them. You'll have to let go of the fear that people will leave when you start saying no. Because the truth is, the only ones who will leave are the ones who were never meant to stay. Boundaries don't ruin relationships. They reveal the real ones. They protect your peace, your purpose, and your power. And once you understand that, you stop apologizing for saying no. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You start honoring yourself enough to choose peace over people-pleasing. And that's when self-respect finally becomes your way of living, not your defense. Real self-respect doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need to prove, perform, or announce itself. It moves quietly, yet powerfully. You can see it in the way someone walks into a room, calm, grounded, certain of who they are without needing to demand attention. That kind of presence doesn't come from pride. It comes from peace. It's the peace of knowing you no longer have to chase validation or compete for recognition. You've learned that people will see what they want to see, and that their perception is not your responsibility. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you, because you understand that silence often speaks with more authority than words ever could. When you reach that point, your energy changes. You no longer react to every criticism or comment. You stop defending your choices, your dreams, and your boundaries. You understand that explanation doesn't equal respect. Some people only question you because they want to pull you out of alignment. But when your self-respect is unshakable, you don't get moved by noise. You know who you are. You know what you stand for. You stop needing approval and you start valuing peace. That's when true power begins to show, not through force, but through presence. Unshakable self-respect means you no longer shrink to make others feel comfortable. You stop apologizing for your confidence, for your standards, for your growth. You stop making yourself smaller to fit into spaces that were never built to hold your strength. You realize that your silence, your restraint, your calm reactions, they all carry weight. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You just have to stand firm in your truth. People feel that. They feel the shift when you stop over-explaining and start embodying. They might not say it, but they notice. They notice that your energy no longer bends the way it used to, that your peace is no longer negotiable. There's something magnetic about someone who's centered in themselves. They don't need to announce their worth or compete for attention. They don't need to chase anyone because they understand that what's meant for them won't require desperation. When you carry unshakable self-respect, your energy becomes your filter. The wrong people get uncomfortable around it, and the right ones get inspired by it. You stop chasing approval and start attracting alignment. You stop proving and start becoming. And the beautiful part is that it doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, through every boundary you set, every silence you choose, every moment you decide to stay grounded instead of reacting. You realize that peace is louder than pride, that your calm is stronger than confrontation, that your self-respect doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be steady. When you know who you are, you no longer need to convince anyone else. You simply live it, and the world adjusts.